Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. My name is Victor, and for today's video, it's going to be a little bit more on the shorter side, just because I want to keep things relatively simple and be able to bring something that's a little bit relevant, especially to some of the things that have been happening to me lately as well. And one of those things that I wanted to talk about is how do you explain tarot to others? And in particularly, this can be a little bit tricky because depending on who you're talking with, whether it's a family member, whether it's a friend, whether it's a stranger, whereas somebody who's looking to get a reading but is not really sure how to go about it, there's many different ways on how to explain this. And one of the things that really caught my attention in regards to this one particular topic is I've personally been asked this many times, especially for people that may have a little bit of a negative perception of what tarot is, or the way that they were brought up as something that not many people are into, or it can be dipping a little bit more into something closer to like a Ouija board could be. So I just want to take the time and kind of explain a few things. So maybe if somebody comes up to you with these kinds of questions, then how will be the best way to respond to what tarot is? So without further ado, let's just get started with some explanations. Let's start analyzing what tarot means to you and what your perceptions of tarot are. I know a big part for me in the way that I like to perceive tarot, to me, is a big part of really being able to understand the energies that are currently at play, perhaps some decisions that have already been made, and just kind of trying to get a feel to some of the consequences that are already on the way, or perhaps things that have already been at works and just kind of bringing a little bit of more light to them. I know that a big part of what tarot could mean to some people, it means that you're predicting the future or you're trying to set things in stone, when perhaps that's not really what is happening at all. Tarot can definitely be used in order to get a really good idea of maybe what's happening around. And a lot of people do get to turn into things like tarot or astrology, religion, and other aspects in order to be able to cope or to seek answers on things that are happening around that perhaps are a little bit too difficult to understand, and just looking for solutions or answers. Finding different ways on how they can tackle with some of the day-to-day issues, or perhaps some even bigger items that they have on their mind. So even if you're able to address kind of what tarot means to you personally, it's also being able to really start breaking down probably some of the misconceptions that may come associated with it. For example, I know that from my perspective, and when I've gotten asked this question, like, what is tarot? Isn't it blank? And when they usually associate the blank term next to it, it's usually some sort of negative connotation, like it's a witchcraft, it's a brujeria. Are you predicting the future? Are you casting a spell, or things of that nature? I know that can be a little bit difficult because, one, you're thinking, what does that have to do with anything? And number two is the way that perhaps movies or media, perhaps time, religion, may have a certain perception of what tarot is. And I think pulling it back to what it really means to you, and then tying it to how you can kind of dispel some of those perceptions that people may have, or those connotations that they might have had as they were growing up, can be really helpful in kind of bridging a little bit of that gap. For me, I know when I was dating somebody a few years ago, one of their siblings had a question of, isn't tarot like black magic? That's what their genuine thought was behind that. And at a time, I was just looking really confused, like, that's not that at all. But instead, when tarot is blank and you can tie it back into dispelling what their conceived notion is versus what that means to you. Whether that means that it is for you to be able to read the energies in the room, to be able to understand consequences that are coming on the road, being able to understand the choices that you have ahead of you, and perhaps what those things that entail, among many other things. But being able to just really understand that What I'm doing is I'm just trying to get a perception, and I'm trying to get a reading on what's coming on ahead based on everything that's currently happening. It has nothing to do with me trying to alter the future or me having to manipulate my way through certain situations and using cards or witchcraft to get my message across or how to get myself ahead. So that's another one of those things that I know can get asked when it comes to that. The other thing that I have gotten asked is, well, I know that my partner doesn't really like tarot or astrology because they think it's from the devil. And the interesting thing is it's a little bit a hard one to kind of tackle down, because what that is telling me is that tarot is not from God, and it's not something that is accepted in any kind of in a religious view, that if it's not from God, it's from the devil or is made with evil purposes or intents. And I think being able to really hone down on that religious aspect, for them it may feel that way, but a lot of the context that I have on a more biblical sense or a more religious sense, it denotes things of use of like witchcraft, which is not necessarily what we're doing here with tarot. And what I mean is that maybe people that do practice a little bit of witchcraft or cast some spells and things like that may use tarot for their personal use, but tarot readers are not all witches, wizards, and cast spells and things of that nature. So being able to make that distinct comparison of saying, I'm not sure where you got that from, but again, tying it back to what that means to you is, tarot for me has nothing to do with me being able to tell you your inevitable future or what's going to happen to you no matter what, but rather is just giving you an insight of kind of what's happening right now that perhaps your naked eyes cannot see, because there is so much happening around us. There is a lot of spirits that are trying to communicate with us, messages that are trying to get across, things that our human ears cannot hear, our eyes cannot see, that the cards can give us a little bit more of an insight, because at the end of the day, we're all born with that intuition, which is what tarot taps into the most. And we can use that God-given intuition that we have in order to discern a lot of those messages coming through. Another thing that I have been asked or addressed, or even a preconceived notion that I used to have, is once I pull the cards, my future is set in stone and I can't do anything to change it, so I'm afraid to know what it says. And I think a big part of that is that it has to come down to, maybe this difference between fate and destiny, where, destiny is you being able to accomplish something and making your path in order to achieve your goals and dreams, but perhaps you can stumble and fail along the way. Whereas perhaps the conceived notion of fate is more, there's nothing you can do in order to change this, where it's going to happen no matter what. It is set in stone. It is a critical point in your life that this is meant to happen. There's nothing you can do about it. To be honest, life is not meant to have things set in stone per se, because we're all giving a free will and free choice. Now, I know some people may be arguing, it's like, but there are fixed points in time where things are just destined to happen no matter what. Things are always going to happen regardless. Have you seen the What If in of Marvel's What Ifs, right? Like there's a fixed point in time if certain things have to happen. And perhaps that is true, but that's not what defines all of our actions when it comes into life. If something is meant to happen, it's going to happen whether the card tells you or not. And to be honest, anything that a card may tell you of what's going to come down in your future, you have to feel a lot of assurance within yourself that nothing is written in stone, but rather everything that you are doing, every decision, every thought that you have in being able to take actions is all going to shape what's going to come forward into the future, versus having to just resign yourself and just say, well, this is what the cards say, so therefore there's nothing I can do, there's nothing I can change, and that's just what it's going to be. When to me, that's not really living at all. We're all given the freedom to choose. We are all given that ability, and we can do with that as much of it as we want and we can. Despite certain situations that we may be in, we all have to rein in what our future holds in store for us and how we're going to react to things coming out in the future. Those are the main big things that I've heard of, maybe how to address and talk with people about tarot in such a approachable way, because I know that it can be very difficult to have people's understanding of what tarot is beforehand and perhaps start judging you, or perhaps start judging your actions in being able to use tarot. And I don't think that should be a deterrent for you or for your friends to be able to have talks like this and be able to clear the air, or perhaps just to even have the opportunity to be able to communicate with one another and just explain really what this is about and what that means to you. And at least that should be able to be helpful in understanding what's going to be happening in the future in regards to perhaps when they have a question, or make yourself more approachable when it comes to having these conversations of what tarot is. And perhaps that could be a really good opportunity for them to just ask more questions about it and to kind of break a lot of those barriers and conceive notions that they might have had before. So that's kind of what I wanted to address in this video. Just kind of keep it short and sweet. I know I said a lot and probably was very repetitive, but at the end of the day, it really does come down to what does tarot mean to you, and kind of have that be the core of what the conversation needs to be about, where it's about just being transparent and communicate with your friends, your family, your partner, other relatives, or anybody else in between, to really express to them like why you use it and why that means to you. That it has nothing to do with all these other auxiliary activities that perhaps others may use, but that's not the core purpose of what the tarot is supposed to be used for. So it's kind of what I have for right now. If you are really enjoying the channel and you're liking videos kind of like this, just kind of keeping it short, just gonna answer some kind of like Q&A, frequently asked questions type of deal, then feel free to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I know I started a new series with my Kickstarter gems. I know that I have the second episode already out. So if you feel inclined to support some people in their future tarot endeavors, then feel free to check that out. And I also have a beginner's guide. So if you are looking to get into tarot, or just kind of bridge the gap of how to make that journey a little bit more simple, and how to get started for yourself, then I have a guide as well that is on the playlist that I will link in the description too. So without further ado, take care. Bye.